delay here. So like I said before, so I'm doing this for the recording. I am only going to cover the book of Esther and then one chapter of Daniel because there's just so much material to cover. There was just a lot more than I expected in the book of Esther. It was just a lot of reading. So I'm going to get to my notes here. And so we start in chapter 1, verse 1. Now, did you guys have any questions about the book as a whole that you want to bring up at the beginning?
Okay. I didn't have questions.
Okay. If you have any questions, I'm going through, just interrupt, okay, and let me know. All right. So verse 1 just says, now in the days of Asherish, whatever that is, who reigned in from India to Ethiopia over 127 provinces, in the days when King, I don't know how to pronounce it again, sat in his royal throne in Susa the citadel in the 3rd year of his reign. He gave a feast for all his officials and servants, and the army of Persia and Medes and the nobles and the governors and the provinces were before him, where he showed the riches of his royal glory and splendor and pomp of his greatness for many days, 180 days. Now that right there is a lot of information. So that the name that you see there is Xerxes the First. So it's the same person. One, I think that's his Hebrew name, and Xerxes would be his Persian name. And so he reigned. This would be the time frame he reigned from 485 to 465 BC. So this is 20-year reign. And he would be the great-great-grandson of Cyrus the Great. Now, Cyrus the Great was the one who sent the Jews, allowed them to go back to Jerusalem. So at this point in history, there were several Jews, thousands of Jews that went back to Jerusalem, and they started rebuilding the temple. All right. And it is, let me see here, Jacqueline's coming in. It is his son that allows them to finish the temple. And then after that, Ezra goes to Jerusalem with another group, several thousand more Jews, and starts teaching the law. And we already went through Ezra. So this is before Ezra, but after. So the beginning of Ezra allows Jews to go back in Cyrus, okay? And so 4 generations of kings later is where we're at. And then after this king, there'll be another Exodus or group that returns to Jerusalem from the Persian Empire. But this happens before that second group heads back. All right. So
you saying this Asherius or whatever is the same as Xerxes?
Yes, it's the same. It's the same. Xerxes the First.
The first, okay.
Xerxes the First. There's 2 of them. There's one later. I don't think we'll ever be concerned with them in our reading, but Darius will appear in Daniel, and Daniel actually is before this. So it's weird. We'll go back in time further when we get into Daniel. All right. So so this is 22 years before Ezra goes to Jerusalem and 34 years before Nehemiah goes to Jerusalem. And Xerxes ruled Persia at the height of its power. It's literally the largest empire known to man at this time. I don't think there's ever been an empire bigger than this until you get to Alexander the Great, who destroys this the Persian Empire, but much bigger than Babylon. So it goes all the way over. I don't know how far to the west it goes, but it goes all the way to Greece, down Egypt, all the way down the Nile River into, which is now Ethiopia, and all the way across North Africa past Libya. All right. And it goes all the way into India, just basically the.
Oh, man. Rod, are you still there? Yep. I think all his daughters are on the internet at the same time.
Yeah, something happens.
Yeah. Or his neighbors are poaching his internet.
Yeah, I mean, I live in the sticks and don't have the internet problem that he does living in the city.
Here, and our internet's terrible, but it's
Indus rivers. It's mostly
I think he's realized now that.
Can you hear me?
We can
Yeah.
hear you.
You can hear me?
Yep.
Oh,
Can you see me?
yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
You guys are all moving again. All right. Well, if my kids are on the internet and slowing it down, I just disconnected them.
He must have heard me.
Yeah, you were
I
right.
could hear you. You couldn't hear me. Now, I don't know if that's the issue. I have a feeling it's my laptop because my laptop download speed is only like 35 MIPS, or it's my internet. I can't tell which it is. So I don't know. It's very
Your
frustrating.
neighbor's poaching your internet.
Not now, they're not, because there's nobody in my whole, because I took the Wi-Fi out and directly hooked it right into my computer. So it's not that now. So anyway, it's weird when you guys say that you can't hear me, you can just say it. I will hear you even though you won't see me. So you can say, Rick, you're disconnected. Then
Over.
I'll know. I'm gonna let Jacqueline in here. All right. Now, where did I leave off?
You were talking about the river.
Oh yeah, it goes all the way to like the Indus River. So way past the Tigris River, all the way into the rivers in India. It doesn't quite get into the peninsula that goes down. It just goes to the west side of India and all the way up towards Mongolia. It is a huge empire at this time. It's far bigger than any other empire until the Roman Empire really. Now, when Alexander the Great takes over, he takes over all of this, but he doesn't have it really organized. Like it's not organized as a full empire, like the Persian Empire is or the Roman Empire. He's conquered all these places, but he doesn't rule it the same way. And so this empire is much bigger, and we're going to get into some interesting things about it. So verse 4, where it says there's a 180-day feast, that may not necessarily be a 180-day feast. That could be that he actually is showing off his greatness for 80 days with many feasts interspersed along the 180 days. But it's interesting that Herodotus, who's the historian, he's a Greek historian, lived in Turkey, where we'd say Turkey is now. He wrote that that Xerxes had 180 days of showing off his power, and that it says that he showed off his riches and glory of his empire, and then he presented his proposal, is what Herodotus says. Now, what's could be going on here, this is really cool. So Xerxes' father attacked Greece and lost in the city of Marathon. Now, you guys familiar with that Battle of Marathon? That's where the Athenians won. And when they beat Persia, there was a soldier that ran from Marathon all the way to Athens to tell them that they had won. And the distance is 26.2 miles. That's the distance of our modern day marathon.
I'll be darned.
Okay, so when Xerxes' father lost, he planned a second attack, because then they started attacking his parts that he had control of in Turkey. And so he was going to give some retribution. And Xerxes actually did it. He organized the largest army ever to attack Greece and lost again. All right. So he loses. And what's interesting is, we'll get into this when we get to some other dates, but that's all going on. So that 180 days could have been gathering all the powers that be within his empire to organize the attack on Greece, which he loses again. And so that I think is what I think is what's going on, but it's somewhat speculative. All right. Then verse 11. This is where he has his feast, and in verse 11 he sends the eunuchs to bring Queen Vashti before the king with her royal crown in order to show the peoples and the princes her beauty, for she was lovely to look at. Jewish scholars over the centuries have presumed that she was only supposed to appear in her crown only. That would be why she refused, that she was not supposed to be wearing anything. Don't know that for sure, but obviously she didn't want to do what he said to do. That would make sense. But she refuses, she's deposed. And then in verse 19, his advisors complain, saying now that all these other men, their women aren't going to obey them, right? And so they demand that he passes a edict. So verse 19, it says, if it please the king, let a royal order go out from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, so that it may not be repealed. That may not be repealed is important, because this happens several times in Persian, and we'll get to this in Daniel as well, is when there's an edict that's signed by the king, has his official, it can't be repealed. And so this is going to happen 2 other times in the book of Esther. All right. So that Vashti never again come before the king, and let the king give her royal position to another that is better than she. So then it goes out and they have a beauty contest that takes a few years. And that's where Esther is brought in. I think it's interesting that verse 21, it says, this advice pleased the king and the princes, and the king did as the Memucan proposed, or as Memucan proposed. So now, one of the things that's I think is important here, you see this king is really easily manipulated. If you guys read the story, he's just easily manipulated. And so everybody takes advantage of it, but those who take advantage of it, it is an advantage because he can be manipulated against them in turn. So, he ends up having a fit, and then his counselors tell him to pass this edict, and then out comes. Now, in the story as a whole, remember that I said this on Sunday, that God is never mentioned in this book. Prayer is never mentioned in this book, but the providence of God is so obvious. It's setting the whole story up, saying, okay, this queen's been removed, and then this Jewish woman becomes queen, and it's just not a cool, Cinderella-like story here. She's put in place for a purpose, and it's made obvious in the story what that purpose is. So any questions about chapter 1? Hello, Jacqueline. Your internet's looking really good today. What's going on?
Oh, I was thinking it's been really bad for me. I've been in and out and had audio problems and all kinds of issues. So
yeah, but right now you're clearer than you've looked in months.
I moved to the opposite side of the room.
Oh, that may be the deal, because that's like really the best signal I've seen, where you're not just going.
Well, good. I'm glad.
All right. Do you have any questions or thoughts on chapter 1?
Not so far. I'm just trying to get myself settled and figure out where I'm even at.
That's fine. We're in Esther. So chapter 2 begins some of the drama. Esther's made, she's made queen. Now this is interesting. Look at chapter 2, verse 15. When the turn came for Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her own daughter to go to the king, she asked for nothing except for Hegai the eunuch, who was in charge of the women advised. Now Esther was winning the favor of the eyes of all who saw her. And Esther was taken from King Ahasuerus into his royal palace. Now look at this, in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, the year of the in the 7th year of his reign. The king loved Esther more than all the other women, and she won the grace and favor in his sight more than all the other virgins. So he set her a royal crown on her head. It dates it here. Now here's what's fascinating to me. That puts the date at 479, his 7th year, 479. It would be in the month, somewhere in the month of December or January. Okay, in our calendar. Now remember I said that Xerxes invaded Greece, right?
Yeah.
He personally went on that trip to invade Greece and lost. This happens after he lost and has come back. So in 479, he loses, returns. This is at the end of the year. So this is December, January 79, the 7th month. So this is late in the year. So what's interesting to me historically, there's not a whole lot of history that's going to refer to Esther at all. But the writer of this book has to know that Xerxes is back in Susa to be married to Esther and not away at war. He knows his dates. And so it's matching up with history very, very well, that this is absolutely likely. I mean, this is absolutely can happen. If somebody was fabricating this or just making the story up, first of all, they wouldn't be writing dates in. All right. That just the way they wrote back then, they wouldn't have been writing dates in. But the fact that he writes in dates, it means it's a historical account, but it also shows that is accurate, because if they would have put in dates that he was fighting off against the Greeks, he couldn't have been getting married and said this woman was his favorite. So I just think it's just validating to the accuracy of Old Testament records. It's just astounding to me how accurate they are when the Bible just provides so much more information of ancient history than any other document there is, and it's really accurate. So I just think the Bible's amazing in that. So anyway, that would have been after his failed invasion to Greece. They never again go and attack Greece again. But all those attacks and everything and conquering opens the way up for the Macedonian kingdom with Alexander the Great to go in and say, well, I'm coming back, and go the reverse directions. That happens later in history. All right, so verse 19, Mordecai is introduced, again, but he's at the gate, right? So verse 19, where is it here? 15, 16, oh, there's 17. What am I doing here? Huh. I wonder if I just got the wrong. Well, let me see here. I wrote verse 19, but it can't be.
Well, that is when he's at the gate. Or no. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's verse 9.
Now when the virgins were
Not
given,
19.
we're sitting at the king's gate, 19. But
Oh, you know what? I'm looking at the wrong chapter. All right, there we go. Yes. When the virgins were gathered the second time, Mordecai was at the king's gate, and Esther was not made known the kindred of her people, as Mordecai had commanded her, for Esther obeyed Mordecai. Now, him being at the gate means he's probably got a job, an official role to be there. He isn't just hanging out at the doorway to the palace. The gate is where official business is being held. And so this is where he overhears the two men that are going to try and assassinate the king, and Mordecai reports it. Now that's also an intriguing thing here. You've got Jewish people here that they could be a part of that, maybe earn some more freedom or something, but they don't. They really do submit to this king, even though he's not a great king. So anyway, so it was recorded in the Chronicles in the presence of the king, and then forgotten about till later in the plot. Now, if you actually did, any of you guys watch the Bible Project video on the Book of Esther?
Yeah.
You did?
Yep.
One of the things that the guy does that's pretty interesting is each one of these stories matches up in reverse order. So this story, these stories where there's an attack at the end, and it builds a story up to where Mordecai is elevated and the Hadad or whatever his name is demoted, right there at the crux, and everything, it tells the same the other story in irony, the opposite happening all the way back one event to the, so it's this happens, it's undone all the way through it. So there's a link together. And in the Bible Project video shows the literary technique, what the author's doing very, very well. I can't do it that well in the air here. But if you watch that video, it's just excellent the way he lays out the whole story. All right, so now we are in chapter 3, and then we've got Haman. Is it Haman? Is that his name? Yeah, Haman.
Yep.
So
Haman.
Yeah.
Haman
Which
is how the
it's
Jews
probably
say it.
not. It's probably not Haman. It's probably Haman, and probably the H is probably silent, so it could be Haman. But those A's are usually it's not A's.
Uh-huh.
But our English pronunciation, especially Michiganders, we say A, but it was probably at any rate. I didn't look it up in Hebrew, so I could be wrong. So anyway, the Agagite. Now, this is interesting. So go to Exodus chapter 17. So Exodus chapter 17, the Jews complain about not getting water, and Moses calls out water from the rock. But right after that, you have verse 8, Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. And this is the battle where Moses, every time he has the staff up, they win. And when his arms get tired, they start losing. And so they prop his arms up so that they eventually win the battle. You remember that story, right? All right, so that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at chapter 17, look at verse 14 and 15. Then the Lord said to Moses, write this as a memorial in the book and recite it in the ears of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar and called the name of it, the Lord is my banner, saying, the hand of the Lord is upon the throne of the Lord. The Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. Now I'm going to explain how we know that Haman is a Amalekite here, because now go to Numbers chapter 24. Now, this is the story where Balaam has been recruited by Balak to curse the Israelites as they're coming into the promised land. We're familiar with that story, right? You remember it? And Balaam is a prophet, and he's been told to prophesy against the Israelites, but he keeps prophesying whatever God gives him, which is good instead of bad. And then in Numbers chapter 24, look at verse 2. It says, and Balaam lifted his eyes and saw Israel camping by the tribe, and the Spirit of God came upon him, and he took up this discourse and said, now this isn't, trying to prophesy here. This is just, God put it in him. And then verse 7, water shall flow from his buckets, and his seed shall be in many waters. His king shall be higher than Agag, and his kingdom shall be exalted. All right. So Agag isn't a person. It is the title for the Amalekite king, like Czar. All right. Now, lastly, go to 1 Samuel chapter 15. Now, this is Saul when he goes to fight the Amalekites. He's supposed to destroy everything, all the animals, all the people, all the women, children, the king, everything. And he brings the king back, right? And 15 verse 8 says, and he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive and devoted destruction on all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag and the best sheep and the oxen, the fattened calves and lambs and all that was good, would not utterly destroy them. All that was despised and worthless they devoted to destruction. So there you see Agag again. So Agag is the particular title of the king for the Amalekites, not a proper noun. I didn't actually know this until I was studying the book of Esther. So Agag is the title of the king, not his personal name. All right. So now when you go back to Esther and you look at verse 1 in chapter 3, after these things, King Xerxes promoted Haman the Agagite. All right. That would be somebody under the king of Agag, the son of whatever, and advanced him. Now, we don't know why he's advanced, but he is an enemy of the Jews by declaration of God, because so these guys would be the Amalekites and the Jews were at war for centuries upon centuries upon centuries. So Mordecai then doesn't bow to him. And I said this on Sunday. He's not just bowing. A lot of time there's speculation that, that he's not bowing because he won't bow to anybody of his own God. But it's just not consistent with the way Jews live, because they did bow before their own kings, and there's no reason to believe that Daniel was arrogant, wouldn't bow to King Nebuchadnezzar, or that, Esther didn't bow to Xerxes. That's probably not uncommon. I think he just wasn't going to bow to an Amalekite. Certainly not that Amalekite. And we'll find out Amon's not that great a person anyway. So anyway, he wouldn't bow to him. And then he gets angry and devises a plan to destroy them. And verse 7, it says he cast the pur, right? So in the first month, this is interesting too. Verse 7.
Yeah.
In the first month, which is the month of Nisan, the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, which is Xerxes, they cast the pur, that is, they cast lots before Haman day after day, and they cast it in the month after month till the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. All right. So he is casting the pur, which is like casting lots. I don't know whether it's different than the way they cast lots in Israel or not. There's some things I said they were like stones with chipped sides, so they could be like an early representation of dice. It's possible that it could be like that. But the pur becomes important because that becomes a part of the name for the festival that the book establishes. All right, or Purim. All right, and then this is going to be really interesting. Verse 12. So the kings were summoned on the 13th day of the first month, an edict according to all that Amon commanded, written in the king's satraps. So to go out in all the provinces and the officials of the people, to every province in its own script, every people in its own language. It was written in the name of King Xerxes and sealed with a king's signet ring. And that was to destroy all Jews, right? So that day is the day before a really special day. It's the day before Passover. So when the letter goes out, it starts going out when the edict is to go out and destroy the Jews on the first day of the celebration of their deliverance from persecution in Egypt. This would not be missed. A Jewish person reading this would never miss this. They would go, whoa, what ironic that it was a day before. And so when the proclamation goes out after it's written is the first day of Passover. So that's ironic, right? So anyway, then, so that's verse 12. It's interesting. Herodotus says they could get a a message to the king and Susa from Turkey in 80 days or 90 days, sorry, 90 days that could travel from one end of the empire to the other in 90 days. So to get to the furthest, it would take 90 days to send everything out. It's going to be 11 months before the order is to be carried out. So they have a little bit of time here. So now chapter 4, is any questions so far?
One thought, wasn't the King Agag, wasn't he one of the ones that they talked about his bed being so massive? One of the Agag?
If that's true, that would be not in a biblical book. It would be one of the extra biblical books. So
No,
I think
it would be in one of the biblical books. They talk about a king who his like bed was like 7 rods or something like that.
I don't know, but I do. That's interesting you mention that, because if you get in the extra biblical literature and actually historical literature, there's a bed on the top of these ziggurats where the bed is like made for somebody the size of Goliath. And so one of the giant clans. The Amalekites are definitely have parts where they're giant clans. And it may be, I don't know if Agag is, I have not read that. I don't remember reading it, but if I've not known that. So
I think it's mentioned in, I don't remember if it's mentioned in Joshua or in Samuel, but I think it's in one of those books that it's talked about.
Well, if it is in Joshua or well, Samuel, it wasn't when Agag was killed. It didn't talk about his bed. But if it's in any of the first 5 books or something like that, like Exodus or Joshua, it wouldn't have been related to Agag, because Agag's not, I don't think the name Agag's mentioned in Joshua. So, but we can look it up later. But I think,
Yeah.
I've heard of the
Yeah, I'm
large
curious
bed, but I've
about
heard it
that.
in extra biblical literature relating to the Nephilim, not the Bible. But I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't know about it. So
Yeah, I know that there is a large bed mentioned in the Bible, but I just don't remember if it's connected to Agag.
right. I don't know. I can do a quick Google search. I'm gonna turn off my Wi-Fi because I don't have Wi-Fi. Huh? Google.
I'm wondering if I can too.
Deuteronomy 3:11, and later in the books, Numbers and Joshua, Og. It's called the last of the Rephaim. The king's bedstead was built in proportion to his side, as most beds he made between 9 and 13 feet. So but it's Og, not Agag. Can you hear me, Jacqueline?
Yeah, I can.
Og.
Og is related to Og,
All right. So
because
now,
Agag would not be too far off of Og.
I don't know. It doesn't sound like he's an Amalekite. They're the Rephaim, but I'll have to check. I'll have to do more checking.
Well, in the first set of verses you gave us, it said Rephaim was Agag. You said the first set of verses you gave us about the Amalekites was in, what was it in again?
That is in Numbers 24:7.
No, it wasn't in that one. It must have been the second one you gave us.
Second one is,
No, it was the first one.
huh?
Numbers, or was there one in like, were you sure? No, the first one was in Exodus that you gave us.
Oh, Exodus is chapter 17, 14, and 15. That wasn't about Agag. That was just about the Amalekites. Exodus 17.
But it was the Amalekites were at Rephaim.
It doesn't say it in
17:8.
15 or 17.
17:8.
Oh. At Rephidim. Yeah, I don't know the connection. It would take more time than right now to have to kind of see whether the Amalekites are related to Og or not. I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me because I think every nation that has been we're supposed to be wiped out by the Israelites are connected to giant clans. So the descendants of the Nephilim.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me, but I don't know that I can find the connection now, but I can search it later. Any other thoughts or questions on up through
Yeah.
chapter 3? What?
Well, to me, connected with the giant clans, then there would be connection there because, they had that, particularly the descendant of the kings of the giant clans, then likely he would have been steeped, Haman would have been steeped in the forbidden knowledges. He would have been steeped in those mysteries that were handed down so he would have had abilities to things that the typical person wouldn't have the ability to do, because he would have been, had knowledge of craft and sorcery and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. And at this time, I don't know if that knowledge had been passed down all the way at this point, or whether the knowledge would have not been widespread either. Because a lot of the knowledge that the book of Enoch shared with those with special knowledge eventually just was shared with all mankind. But I don't know. Let's go ahead and move on to chapter 4. Chapter 4, Mordecai messages he goes and starts with sackcloth and ashes and weeping and wailing, and she sends one of her eunuchs to tell him to stop, and then he sends a message back to her saying, hey, this is what's going on here, and this is what I went through Sunday. She says, I can't do anything about it, I could be killed, and he challenges her, and she goes, then fine. And then what I think is interesting is verse 16, when she says, chapter 4, verse 16 says, go out to all the Jews that are found in Susa and hold a fast on my behalf, and do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day, and I and my women will go fast as you do. Then I will go to the king, though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. So they're fasting. I thought maybe you'd have a little discussion on fasting here, because why are they fasting right now?
I was wondering the purpose of that, but
Yeah. What do you think the purpose is of this particular fast?
I would think favor.
Yeah, I think you're beseeching God's favor so that, the king would be inclined to hear her plea. Then you have, it's interesting when you see a fast that's really shouldn't go much longer than 3 days without water. You can go longer, but 3 days is really tops what you should do with fasting out without water. But food fast can go much, much longer. So at any rate, she tells him not to drink or eat. Now understand, 3 days is really significant all the time with Jewish people, right? What do we know happens in 3 days?
Jesus rises from the dead.
Yeah, Jesus is in the ground for 3 days. Now, understand the way you count. This is important, okay? We count differently. So if we think 3 days, we start at 7:45, which is right now, and 3 days doesn't happen until 7:45 on what day for us?
Saturday.
Saturday.
Right. But for the Jews, if I stopped eating at 7:45 on Wednesday, that's one day. Don't eat it all the next day. And then any part of the third day is the third full day as well. Okay. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Now that's what's important, that when you get to Jesus, he was crucified on a Friday, put in the ground at night, in the ground all day Saturday, rises from the dead on the third day.
I always
In the
I
wondered,
always wondered that too.
Because any part of a day is considered a day. All right. Also, we'll see in Daniel, when they're in training for 3 years, there's a little bit of a controversy of whether he was really trained 3 years by the time he was brought into the king to interpret his dream. But any part of those 3 years would be considered 3 years as well. That's just the way the Jews count it. Okay. So,
You know, there's a definite argument amongst the Jewish people. A lot of people think Jesus died on Friday in
yeah,
the Jewish community.
but he would have been Friday. And it's written down that it is a Friday, but it's the dispute is in how is it 3 days? But that's the way Jews counted. They counted any part of a day is counted as the day. There may be Jewish people that think he was crucified on Thursday, but the scriptures say it was Friday. And if we try and accommodate 3 days to move it back to Thursday, then we're in conflict with scripture. But not if and they would say, well, it's in conflict with scripture, it's on a Friday because it's 3 full days. But 3 full days to the
Are you
Jews,
talking about because that's the preparation day for the Sabbath? You're saying it's Friday?
it's just as you go through all the events well, there's a number of reasons. First of all, they wanted to take Jesus down because of the Sabbath. Yeah, that's one of the points, but there's several things in there that indicate that it's a Friday. But I'm not going to go into that now because we're in Esther. I was only using it as an illustration of the way they count days and years and months in the way Israelites count. Any part of a day, any part of a month, any part of a year is that month is a month or is a year. And then you have so anyway, so that's a fast. It's 3 days. Now look at fasting. Jacqueline, are you able to, you're stuck, so I don't know if you can hear me.
I can.
You can hear me. Okay, okay. So let's talk about other reasons people fast. Oh, she disappeared. I'll show you one. There's another 3-day fast that's interesting. This is in the book of Acts, chapter 9. Let's go to the book of Acts, chapter 9. So this is the chapter where Paul is out there ready to go to Damascus to arrest a bunch more of Jewish people. And Jesus appears to him on the road and he goes blind, right? You remember the story?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
So when he does that, verse 9, so they brought him to Damascus. They had to lead him by the hand to Damascus. And then verse 9, it says, and for 3 days he was without sight and neither ate nor drank. And then there was a disciple in Damascus named Ananias, and the Lord said to him in a vision, Ananias, he said, here I am, Lord. And the Lord said to him, rise and go to the street called Straight at the house of Judas and look for a man in Tarsus named Saul, for he is there, behold, he is what? Praying. But in the first verse, it just says he neither ate nor drank, which I think is interesting because in Esther, they were just fasting. Doesn't say they're praying, but it's implied. And so here it's implied that he's fasting And then it's implied that he's praying, but it actually spells it out. Behold, he's praying, and then he's healed. Why is Paul fasting?
I think repentance.
Yes, that's exactly what I think it is. I screwed up bad, Lord, forgive me. I'm going to fast. And you're repenting. But it could be he's fasting for healing too. But I think primarily it's repentance. And his healing, he is healed, but I think it's repentance. Why else would somebody fast? Let's come up with other reasons.
Well, in the book we're about to read with Daniel, he fasts for wisdom.
Yep, you can fast for wisdom. And
Protest.
yeah, I don't know. There'd be people in modern times do protest fasts. I don't know if they do that in the Bible or not. But yes, there are definitely people in modern times that fast for protest. Jesus went out into the desert and fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. Why was he fasting?
Purification, I think.
He was pretty pure already, but I'm thinking he's the Son of God. He's pretty pure. What was he getting ready to do?
But well, he's getting ready to go into his ministry. And so I think that would be kind of like the thing that, like a priest would fast or to purify in a way.
It could be.
It's they earthly desires to do more of God, basically.
I couldn't understand you, Jacqueline. Say that again.
It's a purification in that it's divesting yourself of your earthly desires to gain more of God.
To what of God?
Gain.
Gain more
God?
of God.
Gain what from God?
Mm-hmm. Just God.
Oh, just God. Okay. Okay, I see. Now, I think that when I look at it, it could be a ceremonial thing, but man, 40 days is an awful long time for a ceremony, a ritualistic type purificational ceremony. But I think that when there's a major launching a ministry, I think that there's, getting ready to launch a ministry, which Jesus is launching his public ministry. It would be a call for fasting. I'm getting ready to do what you've called me to do. I just want everything to be prepared and your blessing and everything on it. But if you're going out to launch a ministry, it would be a good thing to pray and fast before you launch a ministry. I think that you also can just fast in seeking just to be closer to God, a better, just not earning a relationship with God, just puts you in a place where you're more open to, it does something when you deny yourself for a long period of time, that your connection with God can grow stronger. That somehow it has an opportunity to do something spiritually in you. I have, the longest fast I've ever done was 3 days. And I was able to fast until somebody walked by with a hot plate of chocolate chip cookies and I was done.
Now, wait a minute, clarify that. Was that 3
I'm just
days
gonna
the
ask-
way the Jews counted, or was it
It was,
3 days the way we count?
it was a little of both. I think I almost made it 3 complete days. I cut short a little bit by that plate of cookies. But
Let me tell you, if you can get to 7, it gets really simple.
if you get to what, 7?
Day 7 of, yeah, if you can get past 7, there is something that happens that just I don't know how to describe it. It almost feels like there's a severing that goes on between your I don't know, earthly connection, and you literally you stop being hungry, and so you don't it used to fast a lot when I was doing ministry at Michigan State, and when I would come off fasts, because I would do 40-day fasts a couple times a year, and I would have to have people call me and remind me eat, because I just wouldn't even think about it after I got off the fast, just because it just didn't occur to me to eat, that I needed to eat, and so it just a lack of a need of it, but there is a spiritual openness, a spiritual, I don't know, an opening that is incredible if you can get through that 7 days. So that's why I would do it as often as I would, because I loved the experience of the openness, the openness of the heavens after you got through that in hearing from the Lord.
I know that people have gone through a longer fast express the same thing you are, Jacqueline. I have not done longer than 3 days, though I am seriously thinking about doing it. The song "As the Deer" that we've sung a few times at church. You guys familiar with the song we sung, "As the Deer Pants for the Water, so my soul longeth after thee"? That song was written by a guy that was like, he was at a retreat and he was struggling and just not feeling very close to God. He was just kind of burned out. And somebody suggested that he fast. So he went on a fast and he was in a room. He was a band director actually at the time, but he was on a retreat in the summer. And he was in a room with a piano on the 19th day of his fast when he wrote that song. And he was just playing this chord progression, and the Bible was just there open to the psalm where that he took the lyrics from for that song. It's become one of the more famous modern worship songs of the last probably 30, 40 years probably. Anyway, I'm seriously considering a long fast. I know that it's good for you physically. And this is one of the things that's interesting is I've done research on fasting is for years, people said fasting is not healthy. And I always struggled with that. I'm like, God just doesn't tell us to do things that are really unhealthy. I just struggle with it. Well, all of, the last 10 years or so, especially fasting has come out and they're actually showing how healthy it actually is. It detoxifies your body. It gives your organs a break. We eat constantly. We're actually wearing our organs out faster than we should because we have so much food we eat all the time, which makes our organs in a constant digestion phase. So it never rests to finish the job. It's always, it's like running a marathon, but you're always starting a sprint. You never take a break. Your body just never takes a break. It's always digesting food. So at any rate, those are some things about fasting. Anybody have any questions, other questions or thoughts on fasting?
If you do a fast, I'm participating in that with you.
I can't hear you again, Jacqueline. Sorry.
I said, if you do a long fast, no,
I think she's volunteering to do the fast with
Do
you.
it with you. I think so too.
I think that was what it was. So, there you are. Now you're back in decent mode. I think you said you would do it with me, huh?
yes.
Okay, I will let you know. That's encouraging because that actually makes me think, oh, now I have to do it. But I've actually wanted to do a long fast for several years. It's so hard to start. But I think after Abby's birthday might be a really good time to start because I don't have any birthdays till June. So actually I'm going to go skiing in Aspen in the middle of February, maybe after I come back from that. But because birthdays are really tough to fast. Sorry, kids. Nice birthday cake. I'm not eating any of it. But I don't think there's anything really between February and Molly's birthday at the end of June. So that might be a good time. So I don't know. And the reason I would want to fast is I just want to be closer to God. I just want to hear him. I just want to be more open to him. So that's why I would do that. Though it probably would be a good time to fast because at the end of a pandemic, what ministry looks like when we relaunched might not be a bad idea either. So, yeah, we'll see. All right. On to chapter 5. Chapter 5 says, let the king come today. This is interesting. I don't think you know this, Jack. I'd be surprised if you know this. So chapter 5, verse 4, okay? When Esther approaches the king, all right, he extends the scepter to her, which means she gets to live and she gets to talk to him. And in verse 4 says, if it please the king, let the king and Haman come today to a feast. The way the Hebrew is written, it's let the king come today with Haman. You know, it's not quite written the same way. And the first letter of each of these words, let the king come today, is YHWH, Yod He Vav He. Okay, so we don't know for sure if this is intentional by the author, but let the king, which king we're talking about here, come today, could be the Lord God come today, because I need you. And it's a double meaning here. Let the king
That's
of the
awesome.
universe come today. What'd you say, Jacqueline?
I said, that's awesome.
Well, there
I did
are
not know that.
scribes in some codices that made those letters larger than all the other ones to make it obvious to the reader in some of your older manuscripts. So it's there. We don't know for sure whether that was intentional by the author or not, but that would be the only place God's name is in the whole book of Esther, if it is there. So anyway, I thought that was like, wow, that's really cool. So anyway, that spells out Yahweh, God's personal name. And then, so she invites Haman and the king to a feast and doesn't answer, his request. We don't know why, but it certainly builds up the story. And he's like, and Haman is like super happy, thinking he's been invited to this great feast, just him and the king. And then he goes out and gets really angry at Mordecai because he won't bless him. And then chapter 6 sets up like the pivotal point of the book, where the king has this dream. So if you watch that video of the Bible Project, at the bottom of the story, it descends all the way to this point right here where there's a dream. And this is where all the turning of everything upside down goes. So you have Haman, who's been promoted. He's made great. He wants to destroy Mordecai. And then all of a sudden there's this dream that the king has, that he can't sleep. And he has the record read that, hey, there was a guy that told me about this assassination attempt. What's been done for this guy? And nothing. Now, this is super ironic that right at the time when he has this dream and he wants advice from his number one advisor, how to reward a great, valuable man in his kingdom, he goes to Haman, who thinks the king is asking him about himself. And so he's telling him everything he wants. And it's actually going to go right to his enemy. The intrigue, the way the storytelling is done in this book is just, it's excellent ancient literary work. It's an excellent work. And so the plot lays out where there's this sudden twist, is where the elevated is about to become the despised, and the demoted and the despised is about to become the prized and elevated. And so they end up bringing, then he's like all upset because he has to actually lead Mordecai through the city saying, make way, and everybody's praising Mordecai for what he did. And then his wife tells him, you're doomed. and before he has a chance to run, the eunuchs come and take him to bring him to the feast that Esther prepared. So there's like no time for him to get out of Dodge. So he's all bummed about what had happened. His wife says, yeah, God's got it in for you. You're in trouble. It is the king of the Jews is, God of the Jews is too mighty. I think this is in, this is verse 13 of chapter 6. And Haman told his wife Zerah and all his friends everything that had happened to him. And the wise men and his wife Zerah said to him, if Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of the Jewish people, you will not overcome him, but you will surely fall before him. And while they were still talking to him, the king's eunuchs arrived and hurried him to bring him on to the feast Esther prepared. I mean, there's just no time for him to sit here and make plans. So he's just being jerked around everywhere. He literally, think about this. He makes a plan, and before he gets to do anything, it's like this jolt. I mean, he's in there telling the king everything about that he thinks he's going to receive, and he just gets slapped in the face. Nope, it's Mordecai whom you hate. And then he tells somebody, and before he even gets a chance to figure it out, he's like, doink, he's got to go to the feast. And then he goes to the feast, and Esther reveals, you know, to him, to the king, that Haman is the one that actually put this plot up. So now this is chapter 7, verse 4 is interesting. So the king and Haman went to the feast with Queen Esther. And on the second day, as they were drinking wine after the feast, the king said again to Esther, what is your wish, Queen Esther? It shall be granted to you. And what is your request? Even up to half my kingdom, it shall be fulfilled. Then Queen Esther answered, if I have found favor in your sight, O king, if it please the king, let my life be granted for me, for my wish, and my people for my request. For we have been sold, and my people, and I and my people to be destroyed, to be killed, to be annihilated. Which is it. Those are the words that are written in the decree that that Haman wrote, to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. And so, if we had been sold as slaves, men and women, I would have been silent, for our affliction is not compared to the to be compared with the loss to the king. Then the king Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther, who is he? Okay, so still she's like, now she's revealed that she's Jewish, but he still hasn't put two and two together. It's like he doesn't remember the decree that he made to destroy, kill, and annihilate what people? It's like he can't even remember. And Queen Esther, so he asks, who is he and where is he? Who has dared to do this? And Esther said, a foe and an enemy, this wicked Haman. Then Haman was terrified before the king and the queen. So it isn't until that moment that the king puts two and two together. And so when she says, it is my life and my people, she didn't have to say that. She said, hey, I want to save the lives of the Jews. This Mordecai out here that you just elevated, you're about to kill him, because of Haman. She could have done that, but she didn't. Because then she could have left her identity secretive still, but she didn't. She said, it is me and my people. And then, so it's at that, once she points at Haman, then he knows he's Jewish, but he didn't know until after she points out to Haman that, that she's Jewish. So anyway, at that point, that ends chapter 7. Well, actually chapter 7, then he's begging the queen. And then, let me see here. So then he actually they hanged Haman on his, I think they impaled him on there's things that says that and I haven't just taken the time to actually research it, says they hang him or they impale him on a stake. I think he was actually impaled, though a lot of versions say they hung him and his sons later. So at any rate, he doesn't escape. He's dead. And then chapter 8, the king lets Esther and Mordecai write their own edict. He even gives them the signet ring to write the edict. And if you look at the edict, this is chapter 8. You write as you please with regard to the Jews in the name of the king, and seal it with the king's ring. For an edict written in the name of the king and sealed with the king's ring cannot be revoked. So the first edict couldn't be revoked. They're going to write another edict that can't be revoked either. And he's doing this with his consent, knowing that can't be revoked. So they get to write it. And then I think they write the same. So go down to verse 11. Saying that the king allowed the Jews who were in every city to gather and defend their lives, to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate any armed force of people in a province that might attack them. So using the same exact wording in reverse. See, everything turns upside down. It's going one way, and then it just gets flipped. So the Jews are supposed to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. Now it's anybody that goes to them is going to be destroyed, killed, or annihilated. And actually, thousands of people actually are. Then the king asks if she's happy about it in chapter 9, and she says, "Can we do this one more day?" So carry on a second day. Now, why is the author making a big deal about a second day?
Because it's a double blessing in return for the single attack against them.
It's really the author's explanation why Purim lasts 2 days.
Okay.
Because then the command comes out that they're going to have a festival every year for 2 days, and it's the festival of Purim. Now, I didn't share this in church, but there's for centuries, there's been an argument among the Jews whether men are supposed to get drunk during Purim, there's a lot of Jewish rabbis would say, yes, absolutely, you're supposed to get drunk. And so it is the Mardi Gras of Jewish festivals. So they dress up in costumes, they party, they do get drunk, it is the biggest joyful party bashing celebrating festival they have. It just is what it is. They have certain traditions and everything else like their normal Jewish festivals. But I thought that was really interesting that they would even have a conversation as there would be any question about whether you're supposed to get drunk or not. But they actually have been arguing about that for centuries. And they go out and they get drunk. So I wondered about that in Nehemiah. Did I talk about that last time? Was when they were supposed to celebrate and they were supposed to drink wine, and there was supposed to be no mourning whatsoever by command of Nehemiah to celebrate. And I was kind of wondering, how much you wanting them to drink here? I wondered. So anyway, so chapter 9, that just explains the 2-day festival. And there in verses 19 and 21 of chapter 9 says what they're supposed to do here. So let me see, is it 19 through 21. So therefore, the Jews of the villages who lived in the rural towns hold the 14th day of the month of Adar as a day for gladness and feasting, as a holiday, as a day on which they send gifts and food to one another. And Mordecai recorded these things and sent letters to all the Jews in the provinces of King Xerxes, both far and near and far, obliging them to keep the 14th day of the month of Adar, and also the 15th day of the same year by year. So the days with which the Jews got relief from their enemies, and the month that had been returned to them from their sorrows and gladness, from mourning into a holiday, that they should make them a day of feasting and gladness, days for sending gifts of food to one another and gifts to the poor. So Jews still do this. They send gifts to the poor, and they send food gifts to the poor, and they send gifts to each other. They're supposed to send 2 different kinds of food gifts, I guess, as the tradition has grown. So they give food to each other. Anyway, that is the book of Esther. And then Mordecai talks about his greatness in the really short part of chapter 10. Any questions about Esther at all?
Now, which month is the month of Adar? You thought?
That would be 11 months after Nisan. It was 11 months later. Don't know. I didn't actually look up and see when Adar is for.
Adar is the last month of the.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Adar is the last month of the year.
But what month is it compared to our calendar?
So
All right.
it would be like January, February, because sometimes Adar is 1 month and sometimes Adar is 2 months. Because instead of having a leap day, they have leap months in the Hebrew calendar.
Right.
And so I'm trying to remember, it's like, I don't know. Anyways, there's first and second Adar. So on long years, there's first and second Adar, and on short years, there's just first Adar. So, you know, it's so Adar ends typically about what, like 14 days before Passover.
Right now, what it says on Google, it says it's March on the Gregorian calendar, and it's a month of 29 days. What?
So this year in April, right?
What's in April?
Easter.
I think so. I don't know. It does give
Yeah.
say which month. Yeah, you have to ask in which year. In
Because Passover is the 14th of Nisan. And so Adar, the last day of Adar, would end obviously the day before the first
day
of Nisan.
Adar. The first day of Adar this year is February 12th.
Okay. Yep.
That's 29 days. So
Hmm?
And
anyway,
is it just one month of Adar this year?
I don't know. I didn't actually check the leap month. I just checked when it was according to this calendar, but it could be. I didn't know that. I do know they had to do an adjustment because their months are shorter because they're lunar calendar months, and so they would have to add days every so often, more than we would with the lunar the solar calendar. I'm going to just go through unless you have any additional questions, Esther, I'm just going to go through the book, just one chapter in Daniel, and be done for tonight. Did you have any questions? Did you guys enjoy the book of Esther?
Yes, very much.
All right, so let's go to the book of Daniel.
Yeah.
Oh, Jacqueline, it's hard to
Into
understand you.
Wow.
I added something to the chat.
Oh,
Okay, I will look at that. The chat. It didn't show up.
Go up.
Huh?
Nothing there.
not yet.
Not yet.
Oh, there.
All right. We'll be looking for it, Jacqueline. It's not there yet. So the book of Daniel, just to start out the book of Daniel, verse 1, chapter 1, verse 2. So they lay out the date really well. Now we're going to go back in time again. Now this is at the very end of 1st and 2nd Kings. All right. This is before Nehemiah, before Esther, before Ezra. This is right back. We're all the way back right at the end of Kings. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, into his hand, and some of the vessels of the house of God he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and placed the vessel in the treasury of his God. Now that's interesting. So it is the house of his God, which would be Nebuchadnezzar's God, which is Marduk. But it says right here, it says the vessels of the house of God. Do you see that in verse 2? With some of the vessels of the house of God. Okay. That phrase in Hebrew is actually the vessels of the house of the God. All right. Doesn't really work real well in English for us, but for them, this is really important. Now, Daniel's in Babylon where there are many gods to worship. All right. And he's going to make a distinction. This is the God of gods, right? But also what's interesting is every time he talks about the house of God in Jerusalem, or the vessels of the house of God, several times it's brought up, it's always the vessels of the house of the God. So when you have the book that's split up where you have these stories and then you have these prophecies, it'd be very easy for scholars to say this must be written by two different people. This makes it highly unlikely that the book will be written like two people, because the consistency of that one word, definite article, the, makes a connection through the whole book. So it's going to be one author all the way through and keeps it one unified writing by the same author. Doesn't mean Daniel wrote it. It means that whoever did put together all Daniel's visions and his stories and everything else wrote them down. And that distinction means it's one author from beginning to end. Will you say something, Jacqueline?
Yeah, when you say the God, what word are they using? Is it like Baal? Is it Elohim? Is it Yehovah?
I pulled that out of a commentary. I didn't look in the Hebrew myself, and I'm not really good at Hebrew either. So the definite article in Hebrew, I'd have to look it up. I'd have to restudy my Greek to know it. All I
Yeah, 'cause
know
I
is
didn't
that
think there was definite articles in Hebrew.
there's definite articles in Hebrew.
Okay, I didn't think there was, but you probably know that better than I do.
Yeah, well, yeah, they would have, yeah, they have definite articles. I know that the commentator knows what he's talking about because he's quoting other scholars as well. They notice this is it's always the temple of the God. So, but it might be that the way that this is what I don't know, Jacqueline, about Hebrew sometimes is they're like conjugated words. Sometimes the definite article is just included in the word, like it could be a letter.
Mhm.
And connected right to the word, or it could be the definite article is a separate word, and I just don't know. I don't know my Hebrew well enough. So you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do.
So I don't know enough about it, but I do know that that's what they said, and I think it's highly unlikely there wouldn't be a definite article if they were making that distinction. So at any rate, I thought that was interesting. Then verse 4. Let me see here. Okay, let's just start at verse 3. Then the eunuch commanded Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of the nobility, youths without blemish, of good appearance and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace, to teach them the literature and the language of the Chaldeans. Now, a couple of things. In Isaiah, and I don't know if we shared this story before, but King Hezekiah invited the Babylonians in to see all the temple treasury and all of the armory and everything. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to look up the verse right now, but in Isaiah came to him and said, "What did you show him?" And he said, "Everything." And he said, "Your own descendants will be carried off to Babylon and become eunuchs in the serving the king in Babylon." What we don't know is whether Daniel was a eunuch or not, but many people believe he was. I don't know. There could have been other descendants of his that were made eunuchs. Daniel may not, or may have been one. I don't know. But he was very young because he lived a very, very long time, because he lived all the way at least till the 3rd year of King Cyrus. So all the way through from the time of the deportation where they were taken out of Jerusalem, he lived all the way into the king of Persia, at least the 3rd year of the king of Cyrus, making him probably 85 or 90 years old. He's going to be young. And that Plato said that the Persian youth began their training at age 14. So it's very likely that Daniel's right around the age 14 here. Same with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They're very young. All right. And then verse 8, when they say that they don't want to eat and defile with the king's food or with the wine that he drank. Now you're when you look at what the food the Babylonians ate, they definitely ate a lot of pork, and they also ate a lot of horse. Both animals Jewish people were not allowed to eat. And also their ability to know, even if, and I didn't mention this on Sunday, but just the way food's prepared for a Jew is a big deal, because they're supposed to drain all the blood out of the meat. All right. And many cultures, they just keep the blood and they make soup out of it. They cook the blood. So that could be it could be cooked meat without draining the blood out of it, and that would defile it even if it was a sheep or a goat. So they're not taking any chances by not eating any of the meat. And so that's why they ate the vegetables. I don't think there's any doubt that a vegetarian or a vegan diet's pretty healthy for you. I kind of struggle with those who make it a religious edict, like that's the way you're supposed to eat. I mean, just by our created teeth, we're omnivores. We eat plants and we eat animals, just the way God made our teeth. So he designed our teeth to eat meat and vegetables. But it's fine. I don't have any problem with someone being a vegetarian or a vegan, but I struggle sometimes when they get really adamant about everybody else eating meat. So and they'll go to these verses. A lot of times Christians will make a big case by going to these verses to make a big deal on why we should just be eating vegetables all the time. Like, well, then what do I do with my dead deer? So
Don't kill it.
yeah, that's not happening. Anyway, so anyway, verse 21, here's where you get to, this is interesting. So go to verse 21, and Daniel was there until the first year of King Cyrus. But later you'll see in chapter 10 that he actually is there in the third year of King Cyrus as well. So trying to figure out how that works. He was there, he might have been in the court until the third year, the first year of King Cyrus, but that doesn't mean he died then. So, but we do know in chapter 10, he's still alive. If you go to, matter, we can just go there, 10, chapter 1. Or 10, verse 1, sorry.
He figured that out.
It says, in the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, the word was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belshazzar. So we know it's the same Daniel, you know. And the word was true, and it was great conflict, and he understood the word, and he had meaning of the vision. So we know that Daniel lived that. So that would put him somewhere between 85 and 90 years old by then, which is an extremely long time to live in those times, which is odd because older times that wouldn't have been that old. But like, you know, in Abraham's time, people lived a lot longer, but at this time, people didn't live to 90. He outlived like what, 8 kings. You know, it's like amazing how many people he outlived. So people that lived well. So, all right, that's all I got for today. My mind got cooked by the time I got through the first chapter of Daniel, as I can't study anymore. So, any questions?
Are we doing the rest of Daniel next week then, or?
Yep, we'll do Daniel. I'm not going to skip it. I'll do the rest of Daniel. I think Daniel's fascinating. You know, we'll do the whole book of Daniel. I'll just do the stories. But we'll do the stories of Daniel, and then we'll get into Noah. I mean, Jonah. I don't think Jonah's going to take a long time.
That's short. Yeah.
It's short.
What?
That's short.
Yeah.
Jonah.
Yeah, Jonah. Yeah, it's going to be short. So that, I think we can probably catch up by next week. So, all right. Any other questions or thoughts? All right. Well, let's.
Oh, Rick, I texted you the thing that I put into chat. It's a YouTube video about, it's a 50-minute in-depth study of alcohol in the Bible that I thought would be interesting if people were interested in that, what you had talked about,
Okay.
about how the Jews used alcohol.
Okay. Did you see it before?
So yeah, I've watched it. It was very interesting.
Yeah, I'll definitely look at that. I'll share.
Yeah, and I didn't know if you could put it into chat so the other people could see it if they wanted to.
What I'll do is I'll just text it to everybody. So,
Okay.
So then you'll have it on your phones, and whenever you're in the bathroom, you can read on how the Jews got drunk. So
Well, it's not reading. It's a YouTube video. It's a
you watch
sermon.
it. Okay, well,
Yeah.
whenever you don't have anything better to do than watch a 50-minute video. You can speed it up on YouTube, by the way. It's one of the things I like about YouTube. So anyway, let's
I watch
pray.
it while I'm like washing dishes or things like that. You could, do other things while because you don't have to look at anything.
That's true. I wish there was like an audio feature on YouTube that you could just listen instead of have to watch it, but they don't.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you for this group. I really enjoy spending time with the people part of this study, and I enjoy everything that I learn. I hope that they're being blessed by all that we're studying, and I look forward to coming back next week and sharing and discussing more of your word. And ask your blessings on us as we seek to know you better and know your word. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
You guys have a great